All right. Like Oliver Lansley said, my name is David Toohey. I'm an assistant professor here in RU. Here's a little bit of a background about me. Like I said, assistant professor here, also a lifelong gamer. Playing games for a very, very long time now. I also research artificial intelligence for games. And I've been designing and developing games for about 11 years. Here are some examples of a few of those. Some 3D, some 2D, some in Flash, some in like mods of other game engines. But I want to start talking today toward getting to think about prototyping and idea generation about what is a game. And Jonas kind of talked about this already, giving a really nice introduction to what I'm planning to tell you today. So what do you think a game is? Like, what do you need to call something a game versus some other kind of media? Give me some examples.
Interactive experience that user controls.
Interactive experience that the user controls. Okay, what's an interactive experience? What makes it interactive?
Media that we can, control.
Okay, so the player has some control.
Maybe predetermined ways.
Okay.
That create some sort of experience.
Okay, so the player has some means of controlling something. I'm going to call those states. States of the game. You're in some state now. You might have been in some state before, and you'll be in some state in a few seconds. Okay. And they can take actions to control those things. All right. Whoops, I'm looking at the wrong side of my screen here. There are actions there. And then mechanics are the things that describe how you connect one state to the next using player actions, right? Players in one state, they take an action, and then you end up in a new state, and it's the game's mechanics that define how that works. And furthermore, a game needs some kind of non-trivial objective for a player to pursue. They have to have some reason to be taking actions in this interactive world. Maybe that comes from them, maybe it comes from the designer of the game, all right? And furthermore, I claim that, like Jonas was saying, that players interact with a game for the purpose of feeling emotions. It's all about that emotional experience. And so now we can think of a few different kinds of media. Are these games or not games? Right? A movie. Is that a game or not?
In most cases, no.
In most cases, going to a movie is not a game. All right, so in what case might it be a game?
Well, there are probably some experiments with some level of interactivity.
Aha, so you could put interactivity into a movie, yeah. I would argue maybe it's not so much of a movie anymore. It becomes something different in that case. So I think that movies aren't a game because there's no non-trivial objective for the person to perform, right? They're not able to control things. Like you could sit down in front of a DVD player and you could pause the movie, you can fast forward it, you can rewind it, right? You're taking actions as a movie viewer that affect your experience, but really, like you're not really trying to do anything to change the course of what's going on. So I say, okay, that's not a game. You are there for emotions, right? You're playing this thing for emotions. You might want to be scared by a horror movie. But overall, I'm saying that's not a game. What about Photoshop? Similar ideas. Now our objective is non-trivial, right? We're trying to do this, like make a beautiful picture, painting that in Photoshop. But here, we're probably not doing that for the purpose of feeling emotions. And so that's why I would say that Photoshop, while it's an interactive experience using Photoshop, it's not a game. What about being on a web forum? Is that a game? It can be. Aha.
Your role-playing performance, but in general,
right? Sometimes you go on web forums for the purpose of feeling emotions or for evoking emotions in others, right? And so I'm saying maybe that can be a game, all right? What about delivering a pizza? Okay, I'm going to say it's not a game, but which of these things is going to be missing? Emotions. Yeah, emotions. Because delivering a pizza, that could be tricky. Somebody might live like in a jungle somewhere and you have to get to their house before 30 minutes elapse, like in the old Garfield cartoons. So I'm saying that's not a game. You're not playing that for emotions. And finally, a book. You're lacking the non-trivial objective as a reader. You're just trying to get to the end of the book. Maybe it's non-trivial if you have trouble reading, if it's in some foreign language, like for me, Icelandic, that would be non-trivial. But it's not this thing that a designer has given us, or I'm not playing kind of that game for fun, right? So a book is generally not thought of as a game. So let's go forward. Like we heard earlier, a game is about being in some kind of interactive environment where you can do stuff as a player in pursuit of non-trivial objectives, and that players pursue these things for the purpose of feeling emotions. And so all of these things together, states, action, and mechanics, that define some kind of interactive environment, and that's what you're going to be building. Okay, so what makes a game good? I like to think about this question kind of starting off as its opposite. What makes a game bad? Well, you can look for quotes online. You find things like, well, I have no idea what I should be doing next. That doesn't make any sense at all. Why did that happen? Or I'm completely stuck. I can't actually get any further in this game. There are a whole lot of examples like this and more at this website, and this kind of an archive built by Ernest Adams called Bad Game Designer, No Twinkie. Twinkie is this kind of treat that you might give someone if they were doing good, but bad game designer, you don't get it. I encourage you to check that out online. And so these questions kind of get at the fundamentals of game design, the things that you really have to have before you even start making a game good. You need to make sure it's not bad, right? So saying, I can't figure out what to do next, that's like saying, well, the games need to be learnable. You have to be able to understand as the player what to do at every point in time, or at least to be able to figure it out while you're playing. Furthermore, someone's saying, well, that doesn't make any sense. That means that the games and what happens in them needs to be plausible. It needs to be believable in the context of that game. And finally, someone's saying, well, I can't complete my mission. I can't get any further. That means that, well, we need to be able to support achievable outcomes. Okay, the players have to be able to do the things that you as a designer give them to do. And I covered all of these things actually last year at this Game Creators Workshop, and you can find the video of that online. So I'm not going to talk any more about that now, but look to this video on the IGI's YouTube page for more information there. Today, I want to focus on this idea. What makes a game good, going forward from not making it bad? And really, it kind of depends on what you as a designer are trying to do. I call that a design goal. And so this is some kind of intended effect that the designer has on the player, or the designer would like to have on the player. So the players will something. For example, they might say that I want players to feel powerful, or I might want them to learn long division, or I might want them to spend $5 on microtransactions, right? You can think of all different kinds of goals that you could have as a designer, and you probably have multiple at the same time, right? Some of them are about player emotions for sure, and some of them might be more practical or more kind of altruistic, like you're trying to help people recycle more, things like that, okay? So toward answering this question, what makes a game good, I want to spend today on prototyping and idea generation, to think about how we can flesh out an idea that you might have for a particular piece of the game toward thinking about an entire game that could support that idea. Now, to motivate idea generation a bit, take a look at this example from a game that you may have seen before. Three guys started a company a while ago, 2003. And they made many, many games. 51 games overall, almost went broke. And then they decided, okay, we should make one more game. So they decided to sketch 10 ideas every day, day after day after day after day. And one day they drew this picture of the cranky little bird that gets fired out of a slingshot. And they hit it big, right? So it takes a lot of ideas. You have to go through a lot of ideas before you find that one that's the gem. Toward helping me out with this, I took an existing framework for game design called the MDA framework. That stands for Mechanics, Dynamics, and Aesthetics by Robin Haneke and company back in 2001. This is taught at the Game Developers Conference pretty much every year. And I extended it a little bit for the purpose of the course that I teach here at RU on game design and development. Okay, so this is how it works. We have these different components. You can think of, you might have a great idea for the context of the game. Say I really like science fiction. I want something to happen in that sort of a game. Well, now you have to figure out, okay, what kind of experiences or dynamics can occur and what would be encouraged by this context, science fiction? Maybe we can think of a space fighter game, all right? Also, from those kinds of experiences, we're flying around in a space fighter, what kinds of emotions are you likely to achieve from that? Probably maybe some frustration, maybe some fiero, like the feeling of the epic win. And then, okay, you might have other design goals beyond the player's emotions as well. So these are part of your effects you might want to have on the player, but then you can think of larger things as well. Like I said before, you want to help people learn to do math. And so the important thing about this diagram is that it's not a flow chart. You can pretty much start with an idea that falls into any single of these boxes and then follow the arrows to try to build out your idea from there, to think about how you can expand the game and what the other components would be to support that idea that you had. So here's an example. Spaceflight and an alien world. That's our context, theme, and setting. Dynamics, well, maybe that should be shoot 'em up combat. And our design goal could be, okay, feel frustration and Fiero. And then the mechanics that we need to make these kinds of experiences happen, to shoot 'em up combat, well, that could mean AI enemies and bosses, some kind of bullet hell dynamic, or bullet hell-like mechanics so that there is stuff flying around everywhere for the player to dodge, maybe power-ups to pick up. So you can think of something like Jamestown as an example of this sort of game. Right. And so just to go through the stars again, we start with the context, then we're going to move over to the dynamics. What can we encourage there? Then we move up to the design goals, and we can also kind of go across, think about the mechanics. And then finally, you'll need some kind of technology that supports this kind of game. Maybe it's a 2D game engine if you're making a 2D kind of top-down, side-scrolling space fighter game. All right, let's think of another example. Suppose I have this great idea for a mechanic that involves digging and putting blocks in different places, all right? Well, and then I'd really like to have people kind of build things. Okay, you can think about building stuff by placing blocks, and maybe they're going to explore by digging. Those are our dynamics. And then our design goal would be for players to have fun while they're doing this. Context could be, okay, maybe some kind of creation and survival game, some kind of setting as an open world. And like Mojang had to do, you might have to create your own engine to make this happen, right? So I'd like to now move into an exercise for you guys to do. And this is something that I do in my game design development class here at RU as part of the School of Computing Science. We're going to save these two blocks for later at the moment. I'll come back to mechanics later on today. And we'll hear about game engines in a later workshop. So here's the exercise that I would like you to work through. We're going to do this in random groups. So these are meant to be not the teams you plan to work with for Game Creator. Okay, this is to promote sharing different ideas. If you have some super secret idea you don't want to tell anyone, that's fine. You can just not say it right now. I'm going to give you seeds for where we're going to start. We're going to pick one of these blocks. In this case, a dynamic. I'll give you an example of an experience that a player might have in a game. Each group will get a different experience. And then I'll have each person write down 3 design goals that they think could be evoked. 3 different things that you would want the player, an effect you would want to have on the player based on that dynamic. At least one of them has to be an aesthetic, so a player emotion. And then as a group, you pick your 2 favorites. Okay, so that's the first phase. There are 3 phases of what I'm going to do. I'll explain them first, and then we'll move through each one in groups thereafter. Second phase. Each group member writes down 3 contexts, right? This is a theme and a setting that they would think would encourage that dynamic and support their design goals. So you're going to connect all this stuff together. And then as a group, you pick your favorite context. And then finally, once you have those things together, I'll have one person from each group just stand up and say a couple sentences describing this game that you've imagined. So for example, we imagined a comedy game about stealing art from a museum with stupid but deadly guards. Ideally, the player should alternate between laughing at how absurd it is and feeling tense about getting caught. And so we would have the dynamic of stealing, context, comedy in a museum, and then design goals of feeling amusement and tension. Okay? So at this point, I am going to put you into random groups of 4 people each. I'm going to give each person a number. How many have we got in the room? So if you help me with the head count here. Around 50? Yeah. So how many groups do we need? 15 probably? 16? All right, I'm going to give you a number between 1 and 16. Once you have your number, you're going to need to find the other people with your same number. All right? This is your challenge. All right, I'm going to start up here. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 16. All right. I need you to gather 5 people with your group. So have 1 through 8 toward this side, and 9 through 16 toward that side.
¿Qué número está? Is there any group with more than 4 people? All right. Okay, we're going to come around and give you some sheets of paper. One of them describes the phases of the exercise. One of them is that picture. And also, we're going to give you a card. This is a card from the game called Once Upon a Time. That card will describe an experience that the player could have in the game. And that's where your starting point is going to be, in that yellow block called dynamics. And from there, you follow the instructions on the sheet that you get in phase 1, which will roll it back to phase 1 right away on the slide. And then afterward, we'll talk about the games that you come up with. Okay? So Mark over there and I are going to come around and give you cards.
For example, storm, living in a world, storm, so like interstellar, and this is the player experience as a dynamic. So you're someone that starts a concept. And the first thing we have to write like what kind of world. No, that should be more. That should be more the theme instead. Okay. Dynamics is more like what this one. I try to explain. You the storm. Við erum bara að finna eitthvað sem gerir að storma væri bara storma. Men vi kan ju bara ha det till en så det skulle vara skrämmande för att jag vill skulle vara för
This is from the game. It's from a board game, right? Okay. You choose.
So the
well, stava imparando cioè fra cosa so you still need to like see them coming.
Okay, so now let's roll back. There we go. If you have any questions, just raise a hand and I'll come talk to you.
So we skip the phase. Yep, it happens often. Okay.
Voidaan ottaa tätä enää? Tosiaan, että se kokonaisen vastuullisen screen-capalle on passettu. Joo, sitten tulee pohjalla. Tähän on tosi kallista.
Okay, dynamic for you.
Tässä on varsin se. Sytyt pohjalla. Sytyt pohjalla. Sai siihen. Katso tuolla. Raja se on. Tässä nyt henkilö
Yeah. If in doubt, skip phase 0, follow what's on the slides. Okay? Then you're good.
Still have questions?
Vi var gjort cycles, then I am
Not much more. I want to check in. Is anybody still on phase 1 working on their design goals? One team? All right, hurry up. We're going to have maybe 5 more minutes total here before we're standing up and presenting. So this is meant to be rapid.
Aftur fara frá hálfum, ekki það að fara frá heldur það að hverjir hálfum fyrir einhverjum síðan þetta Dagskólan þess að og þrjú að stakka sig. Ekki það. En það sér svo spessa á hvernig ég var þar eftir ég verður að tengja það í stofn. Og þá ekki að sagt. Ef það getur verið forest.
Pro space.
Space basically survival. Because the draft back of survival.
Það getur verið fólk á skip alltaf það frá eins og þegar ég held að það sé okkar að velja fyrir það.
Show of hands, which groups are done right now? Which groups have a sentence they're ready to, a couple sentences they're ready to talk about? All right, we're looking at 3 or 4 done. All right, start working on those sentences right now if you're not done yet, okay? I'm giving you 3 minutes.
Okay, þannig að við getum það aftur einhverju aðra sem getur ánast þegar þið voru að þessum snóð
Survival horror game set in the Arctic.
Supernatural horror cures
Two minutes left.
Ég var ekki að sjá þetta sem marketing. Maður helst móta því að maður var scientist og það kemur eitthvað að maður er survival
1 minute left. All right, time is up. We're going to start presenting the ideas now, okay? Who is group number 1? Right here. All right, you guys are up first.
Yes.
Madly finishing a sentence. Okay. So yeah, stand up and talk to them. You're not talking to me.
Remember, you got to project at the back when you're talking.
We imagine a supernatural survivor horror game set in the Antarctic, where the player plays as a scientist who has to survive against monsters and the elements.
Okay. So what was the card that you got?
We got Storm, so it's in a snowstorm.
Surviving the snowstorm in the Arctic. Okay, nice. Good job, guys. Next, number 2.
Since we got the card of transformation, here's what we got. A player experiences transformation that empowers him and gives him either a huge amount of power or speed that gives him abilities to go in this nuclear future warfare to go and do military stuff.
So we have some kind of super soldier who's been empowered by some kind of transformation device.
Yeah.
Like Captain America kind of?
Well, no. The one the game was sci-fi nuclear warfare.
Okay.
Where the player is supposed to be some sort of soldier that gets to transform into in between two forms.
I see.
We're arguing about having it a robot that transforms from being a biped powerful guy to quadruped fast guy. But we didn't decide in that one. So
Sounds good to me. So futuristic sci-fi transformation into a soldier or some kind of military. Next, number 3. What's that? Over there.
Okay, so this setting is based in science fiction, computer space. The Earth has, there's been a catastrophe on Earth, so there have been made 5 motherships, and everyone's going out and finding a new planet to colonize. So the game would be set in 3 stages, where the first stage would be survival in the outer space and trying to find a new planet to colonize. The second thing would be the colonization itself and trying to figure out how best to survive on the new planet. And if it wouldn't be suitable, I'd try to find even a new one. And the third one, third stage would be basically when you already are set on the planet and have everything figured out and everything prepared, and you are doing well for yourself, and maybe thousands of years have passed into 10,000 with now. You would go back out to space and try to find new planets to colonize and try to expand your empire. In the end, you might find the other planets that the mothers went to, and then the other humanoid people might interact with each other, and then there would begin maybe war, maybe peace, and something like that.
Okay, so what kind of aesthetics are you going for? What kind of player emotions would be?
The card that we got was home, so we first thought of like 3 things. Like it was like moving your home, like having to move somewhere else, and that's really colonizing other planets and going out
So
into
like a
space.
feeling of loss from having
Yeah,
to-
but a loss from like
Okay.
there's a catastrophe and you like lose your home, and then there was like building your home again. That's the colonization part where you go out and find a new planet, make a new home, and then the third goal that we
Expanding.
was like expanding, like protecting your home and like expanding.
All right, thanks, guys. Next group, what number are we at? 4? Where's that? There.
The conduct is something to yield. So the game we imagine as the player arrives, we don't know the location, we don't know the country, we don't know anything, but he arrives in a town that used to be full of life, but now suddenly everyone seems to have eyes. So what he gets intrigued, curious what happened, and sets out to find clues, sets out to find hints. And so the game is basically about that, finding what on earth happened to all the inhabitants of the town. And the feeling he has, the player has, he's intrigued, he's excited, he's probably a bit nervous. Might be some fun in it. Possibly. And yeah, am I forgetting something? No?
All right, so exploring a ghost town to feel intrigued.
The town that used to be full of life, maybe just the day before.
Aha, I see. So it kind of seems to be recently abandoned. Everyone has disappeared. Yeah, that's intriguing to me. Okay. Thanks. Next group. 5.
So our game is about the dynamics flying. So we like added survival also. As a player, you're a bird, and your main goal is to survive the harsh climate that is the world. And as a player, you can choose between bird types, and then it differs between what type of bird you are, what kind of activities you're going to be doing. So if you're like a pigeon, it's mostly just gathering stuff for the nest, and you can also be more like a predator. And on top of the gathering, you can also be like trying to kill other birds, or it's more like action-packed. And the player should have fun with being a bird, because it can be kind of funny. It's kind of like just kind of bird simulator. But also the tension of surviving and stealing things from humans and other animals to survive in the world.
So life is a bird, which may not be so easy for this particular bird.
And the concept would be that curiosity and excitement. And our design goals would be to feel amusement, but also tension. This bird.
Yeah, play it happily. Thanks. Next group, number 6.
Yeah, we've got Life in the Forest.
Can I speak up a little bit?
We've got Life in the Forest.
Okay.
We have the idea of survival and operation. Like the idea of the sci-fi aspect of it. We added some kind of futuristic crash. And I'm on that with the forest line. One survivor. He has to figure out how to eat, what to eat, what to eat, how to do tools, like shelter. But yes, the ultimate goal would be how to get out of it.
So we have somebody who was on a spaceship, they crashed into a forest planet, now they have to figure out how to live and ultimately escape back to their
Yeah.
Okay, that's a really good summary, thanks. Next, number 7.
The game has a forest market. It has unchained islands. The player has to escape it. We have to escape from these islands. And it's constantly under like a threat of death and something that chasing him. He doesn't know what it is.
Okay, so we're on some set of islands. How are the islands connected to each other? Boats or tunnels?
It would be like a linear experience. Like you go from island to island, and how the gameplay is how to go from island A to island B, island C. Like it would be different between the islands.
And so then the hope of escape is that there's some kind of transportation on the last island or something like that?
Yeah.
All right, so we've got something chasing the player or trying to get at them, so you're going for clear emotions of fear?
Exactly.
Okay.
But he doesn't really know that the main reason for going from island A to B is because he's being chased. Like, you could possibly be a way out of the situation, like on the last island, but not necessarily.
Okay. So does it get caught if you can't escape?
Sorry.
Does it get caught if there's no way off of these islands? So you go to the last one and this thing's still there with you, right?
We didn't get that far.
Nice, it's a good start.
Okay.
All right. Number 8.
We got the card abstract. So we thought of our comedy strategy game, but an animal that has to live in the forest and hunters. And you collect materials for track making and level up your track making skills as the game progresses. And you can also get caught in tracks of other hunters and what you get out of them. So we're going for like a really fun experience, but also with some cautiousness and tension with getting caught in other traps.
Okay, so sorry, you're the hunter or you're an animal?
You're an animal.
Aha, okay.
Hunting hunters.
Hunting hunters. Okay, so you're going after the hunters and they're trying to go after you at the same time. And you're going for a comedy vibe, so it should be maybe cutesy animals somehow or goofy hunters in some way. Okay, yeah, that sounds good to me. All right, thank you. Next group, number 9.
Yeah, so we thought about an open world. Yeah, we got the card Thief. So we thought about an open world where you just run around, explore, and steal. And the emotions are like tension, but also like moral. So you have karma, depending on whether you're taking the easy way or stealing from like poor people in the street or going for the rich and well-protected people.
And then consequently, it would be a lot harder to steal from the powerful rich people, and it would be more rewarding. Whereas you can just go on the street and feel it and the result is bad karma.
Setting like a huge futuristic city, and you can like it's really vast and huge, and you can like want to explore it, want to like
find out about this while you're home.
So you mentioned karma. So we have the opportunity to be a thief in a large futuristic city. Karma, to me, like we can track these things, see if we get good karma or bad karma. But for the player to notice it, we have to have some effect on what they can do later, right?
Yeah.
Are there going to be people who help them if they have good? Good karma?
the storyline will change based on your decisions.
Yeah, so you could go for the Robin Hood character who like steal from the rich and gives to the poor.
Okay, sounds really aside from the futuristic setting, that's exactly how I play Skyrim. Running around and stealing from everybody. All right, next group. Number 10.
We got the card of the mountain. Or climb mountain. So we invented a game where the players travel the world and scale mountains, finding and slaying Nordic mythical beasts before they wake up from their slumber and consume the world. The battles will be big and thrilling. That's the motion we're going for. And the boss battles will be big, but like you have to use tactics and kind of be able to slay these.
So this is something like Shadows.
Yeah, like cross that with column.
Okay. So some kind of action game where you're climbing a mountain and climbing back, taking it down, doing it several times.
Yeah, with the mountains. Sort of puzzle elements too.
So puzzle elements. Wow.
So you choose different paths. You need to kill one of these if you don't have the right weapon for it. So you go back to kill another, but you got like a bomb from it to kill the weapon.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so you can pick your progression through the dice that you want. Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot. Number 11. Some lights on the game.
Okay, we've got the card Object Breaks, and basically the idea of special and basically the idea of I don't know what the best word is, control heaven.
Control heaven.
So I said, you know, when you're playing a video game and someone comes at you, let's say a game, someone kills you, destroys your property, and you feel bad about it, and you feel smart about it and good about it, and you will walk away. You will be pissed off allows this. So the player, when you join the game, you expect that you will destroy your friends. They will expect that you will destroy them. So it will not be similar to, for example, Evil Life, where you're always expecting someone is going to kill you and destroy your ship. You will be slightly pissed off, but you know you will do the same to him.
So the game about breaking stuff where that's kind of massively multiplayer game where that's the
Yeah, we were wondering about like some kind of multiplayer or two-player or something, and we thought about medieval castle, some kind of tower defense or both defense and kind of options. Okay, and you perhaps be building your beautiful castle or something that you like, something you enjoy building. It look beautiful. Maybe it doesn't have a practical value, it doesn't have guns or anything, but it's beautiful, it's yours. And then the other player tries to break in, destroy the stuff, and maybe get some points from it to after this.
Okay, so it sounds a bit like if we were put some sort of siege mode into Minecraft, where we can build our castles and then like have fun by destroying other people's stuff.
Basically, Minecraft, where one idea would be Minecraft, where you actually expect that people could come and destroy your stuff.
Yeah, an open server carries that risk all the time.
Yeah, but in this case, but in this case, you're sort of social. The society in the game allows you, says, well, you can go and break his stuff.
Socially acceptable to destroy stuff. Okay. All right, thanks a lot. 12?
Our idea was a survival horror game. So our part was
Cottage.
It's a survival horror game. Set in a cabin in the woods. So the player must gather supplies to defend against other survivors and monsters. And the players are usually homelessness, also accomplishments for surviving. The risk versus reward, the scavengers are put away from the cabin, but you still need to keep the cabin safe.
Okay, so there are monsters in the store, so some kind of supernatural setting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a recent game like that on Steam, a top-down thing where you're exploring the single forest. Just I can't remember the name. Let's start. No, there's another one that I think you were playing. It's very, very creepy. You walk into a house and it spawns a monster right in front of you. Darkwood. Yeah, Darkwood. Check it out. Yeah. That's a really good summary. Thanks. All right, next.
Okay, so we have a Latin game, edition by Day, edition by right, and you were excited to talks, and then during the night you came coming out, and people can find out the connection and they can ask. You want some you. So that's my use.
Okay, so this is a game about you have a dual identity and you're trying to keep secrets. Yes. Both about the nefarious things you're doing as a politician in the daytime and possibly illicit illegal things you're doing at nighttime.
And then you will be able to buy components like real money, like actual bribery to the game, or stuff like that.
Okay, so disguised.
So yeah, you can put your bribes with real money.
All right. I like it. Thanks. All right, next group.
Our government is a rescue. We have this basic guy. We are on a mission to rescue X before he or she gets killed by trolls. Find a way through a big forest full of raging trolls. Basically, you are emphasizing that you are a guy. You are in love with a girl in the other side of the city. And the city is in the forest. So you have to fight all the other guys and kill all the trolls to get her.
So
we'll find out season 1.
So what kind of emotions are you talking about?
Thinking, colors. First, look at the tail there and see scores and go through. Finally, for me. It feels like it's part of the game as well. Yeah, Alright, yeah, next one. Okay, now number 50.
Yeah, so the dynamic we got was poison, and our design goals were suspense, humor, and social experience. And the context is a dinner party. So the game is a multiplayer game where everyone selects a single item to poison, and then the players take turns eating one dinner item. And the suspense is like, okay, to eat something poison, and then you die and are eliminated. And the goal is to be the one last standing person.
So if you had, say, 8 people at this party, you would need more food items.
Yeah, like you have like 40 items or something, and everyone poisons one.
The poisoning, does that have to be done, like, would it be done in secret?
Yes.
So that, like, do the players have to like walk up to the table and like cautiously click on something on the table? Or like,
That's what, like the plan was just like everyone selects one item that they wish to poison.
okay, and then it happens.
Yeah.
Mechanical offering to others or kind of shift it around.
Right, yeah, others you can kind of cautiously push something to the side, or like make put it out in prominent, make sure it looks really nice so it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Last round.
Yeah, we had the dynamic of fighting, and we had focused on the emotion of stress and vulnerability, and the context was a masquerade ball. So it would be sort of a murder mystery game while you're being hunted by this murderer in the crowd of the masquerade. So you have to pinpoint him out before he gets you.
See. So is this a multiplayer game that is everybody player, or the AI agents could work both ways? Right. So the killer might also be an AI.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's actually a game like this out there called Spy Party, where 2-player games, one person is a guest at a party, like some kind of ball with a bunch of AI characters, and the other player is in a house across the street with a sniper rifle. They don't know who each other is though. So the game, as the person at the party, is to pretend to be like an NPC. Right? So do everything you can to make it not clear to the other person that you're the person you're after. And their job is to figure out which people at the party is the party. Okay. I encourage you to go and check out this game online. So I got it for a second.
I also think there's one called like the ship or something where like everyone has a specific target, and there's also one target you go.
Yeah, it's another crucial. Yeah, reverse Turing test in a way, that's right. Like, can you behave like an AI agent rather than all right, so that finishes up that exercise. So I've got some more slides to show you, and I'll do that right now, but there are also goodies here for you guys to enjoy. So I encourage you to get up, have some of that in a moment while I set up the projection for the next
This is still working. Did you? It's still running as far as I know.
Okay, we may want to edit the video.
Yeah, you can probably pull it down. It's just the light depth. Why is there nothing up there?
Yeah, everything went down.
Yeah, it was a timer, I think.
All right.
Let's just make sure this feed is still running. Yeah, we're still live. That's good.
So we need to, should we close it out, plug it in again?
That might break the Hangout. We can always have it uploaded to Park, so.
Yeah.
So try it.
Or we can switch
Yeah,
to.
try
I know something's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I meant to look up the projector.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Business.
Alright. That, a few seconds behind. Yeah, that was, yeah, it was supposed to be on your slide, but something broke. So, yeah, okay, so it's working now. It's got me that. This is the live feed. Yeah, I think PowerPoint or something must have broken the connection and it reverted to the webcam.
Can I take this?
Yeah.
Yes. Excuse me, what was the name of the game with the sniper and the spy party? Spy party.
Let me get this right. Game.
Yeah,
Ideas.
You're in this right. I have.
Actually,
so yeah, both that. So it's
all right, let's have everybody sit back down, please. Okay, so you remember I told you before that we would talk about these two things later, right? Mechanics and game design, or game engines. Game engines, that's a later workshop in this series, so I encourage you to come back for that. Game mechanics we're going to talk about right now, okay? Just fairly briefly. So what do I mean when I say mechanics of a game? Well, that's just kind of a system of processes, of things that can make things happen, that take somebody's action, the game's current state, and then together they determine what's going to happen next. All right, so let's think about actions more specifically in a context you might be familiar with. You might actually be too young to be familiar with this particular context. Super Mario Brothers from the Nintendo Entertainment System. So here's one button. You push that, we're going to jump, we're going to swim. You push a different button, you're going to dash. So right, I'm not thinking of just the inputs like, oh, they press the A button, oh, they press the B button. Those are inputs. I'm thinking of the actions, things kind of in the context of the game that the player gets to do. So they might be able to jump or dash or shoot by pushing the B button. Maybe we're going to add an object into the world. It's a bouncing fireball. They can change the mechanics of the game with the button on the controller, right? They can pause time with the start button. They can also modify where Mario is with the directional buttons, like moving left and right or crouching. And the up button, the manual actually says this. It just lists a bunch of question marks for what the up button does in Mario. Has anybody noticed it doing anything useful? I mean, I know players who push it when they're jumping think they're going to jump a little bit higher, but I don't think it really has any effect. And so now we can think about actions and also rules in this context. And a rule, in general, is just a kind of principle that governs the behavior of something, right? So it tells you how something should behave. And in computer games, that means that we're going to restrict how certain actions affect what happens next. So like how certain inputs on the controller affect what happens next. So some examples would be that in Mario, if you haven't gotten that mushroom and turned into Super Mario, you can't crouch. Little Mario is just this guy who stands there all the time. This is on the original NES. In later versions of the game, you can crouch and become like half the size of Little Mario. But in the first one, he couldn't do anything. And furthermore, you can't walk through walls. If there's a wall of bricks in your way, you just can't get through them. So that's an example of what rules are. And now, in this context, I like to think about game mechanics in two flavors. The first one I call a reactor. And this is something that just kind of validates the game rules. So it makes sure that if you try to walk into a wall, it doesn't let you through. Or to say that, okay, only Super Mario can crouch. So if we call this mechanic, this little piece of Mario Brothers height-restricted crouching, then you can say, all right, whatever state we're in the game, if the player hits that down button and they're saying, I want to do the action crouch, well, then the next state should be whatever all the other mechanics say, like Fireball should keep bouncing and the Goomba should keep walking, plus, if you're Super Mario, then you crouch. Otherwise, you do nothing. Okay? So that's an example of a reactor. And they're used to kind of, actions and rules, things that the players are doing right now and making sure that they don't break stuff. The other kind of mechanic that I like to think about is, I call it a simulator. And what it does is to say, okay, it keeps things going even if the player's not doing anything, even if they're just standing there waiting, not pushing any buttons. So like the fireballs in Super Mario Brothers, if the player just stands there, they hit B once and then they don't do anything, the game doesn't just stop, right? Things keep going. And that's what a simulator is all about. It keeps things happening even if the player's not doing anything. It keeps doing this even while they are doing things too. So it's kind of running all the time. And so our mechanic is the fireball behavior in Mario. Again, any state during gameplay. The action for the player is just to watch, right? They're not pushing any buttons. And then this is what we do. For every fireball in the world, if it's hit something or gone below the bottom of the screen, we destroy it. It doesn't exist anymore. If it hits an enemy, we destroy that enemy too. And then otherwise, just keep it bouncing, keep it going along. And that's how you could implement the fireball behavior in Mario. So this is commonly used for things like physics or AI characters or scheduling systems and games. What can reactors do? Well, all kinds of stuff. They can modify an object, like the position of Mario. They can add a new object, like you press the B button as Fire Mario and a fireball gets instantiated in the world. They can help you select objects. They can initiate the use of an object in the game. Like I'm going to press the up arrow in some later versions of Mario to go through a doorway. Here are other examples. Opening a door, adding fireballs, removing a block, selecting a line of dialogue, activating an elevator. So reactors will be what handles that. They can also transmit messages like chats to other players or maybe emoticons. They can change the game mechanics. Remember the start button in Mario? That's a mechanic changing action that a reactor would handle. It freezes the time of the game. Yeah, and that includes modifying, enabling, disabling other pieces of the mechanics. Or you might be setting the difficulty level, like in Pac-Man, it gets harder and harder over time. Maybe the player can do that by choosing an easy mode or a hard mode. And also, this is a particularly nice example of how mechanics can be changed during a game, right? When the gravity gun in Half-Life 2 gets supercharged, all of a sudden now, when you point it at a character and try to use it, it doesn't just do nothing, it actually picks him up. Okay, so this is an example of that mechanic, this like shoot the gravity gun, doing something different during a game. What can simulators do? Well, it can do everything that a reactor can do, plus some more stuff. It can run scheduled things, so scheduled or cyclic events, like the fireball bouncing along. Countdown timers, day and night cycles. It can run your AI systems or AI characters, like maybe you have some kind of AI director, like in Left 4 Dead, or maybe you've got bots running around that the player needs to evade. It can also run physics, and that's pretty common in game engines right now. And it can also help you play your animations back. So these are things that progress over time regardless of the player doing anything or not. And they can also handle non-instant player actions, right? A player action could be to shoot a fireball in Mario. I push the B button, but we need something to keep going after I've finished doing that action, right? It takes some time for that thing to play out. And so that's what a simulator can be used for. Okay, here are some examples. Picking up, putting down stuff, throwing things, consulting the Helix fossil. We can simulate stuff as well, like projectile motion or flanking vulnerability or villager AI. And all of those things might allow the players to have interesting experiences, the dynamics, right? They can destroy houses that pigs have made, or they can outmaneuver tanks, or they can be called a chicken chaser in Fable. And this is all these mechanics are about allowing the players to do something, to have some kind of experience, right? That's the dynamics that we started with earlier today, right? Each mechanic enables some particular part of the experience the players can have. Okay, well, let's think about all these different pieces of mechanics, right? Just the fireball behavior, we need to combine that with other stuff to make a larger game. And really, the core gameplay loop is where all of this, the most important pieces of this happen. And so what it does would be to check for player actions. Is the player doing something right now? And for each action, we need to run the corresponding reactor, the thing that handles that action. Then we need to run all the simulators as well. So like we have to keep the fireballs that were already there bouncing around. We have to keep the Goombas moving around, that kind of thing. And then repeat over and over again, many times a second. And yeah, it could be independent of your graphics rate as well, right? You could be running at 60 frames per second for graphics, but your simulators could be running slower. If you have some complicated AI processing to do, like figuring out where the player is or planning a path, you might want to do that asynchronously from the frame rate of the game. And many engines support this kind of split of loops. So now, if we think about a particular dynamic, part of the player's experience, then what we could do, and you can I'll let you refer back to this presentation later to find this stuff out, or to try this out rather. You can write down that experience as a sequence of like sentences, just like first the player will do this, then that, then that. And then you can figure out what mechanics are required to enable each sentence. So here's an example. The player is sneaking through a building, the guards see the player, and then the guards chase the player. So this is just short descriptions of a sequence of gameplay you might imagine, an experience a player can have, okay? And so now we have to think, what mechanics do we need to actually make this work? Well, for sneaking to work, we have to have the player be able to move, their avatar in the world has to move, they have to be able to be concealed or not, so that involves some kind of sensing by the guards, right? And for the guards to be able to see the player, they have to be able to perceive. Non-player characters have to have some perception built into their AIs. And furthermore, to be able to chase the player, well, the player has to move, we've had that from before, and the NPCs have to be able to do path finding, they have to do path following, they have to do moving target pursuit effectively if the player is this moving target. And so those are examples of the mechanics that you would need to allow that player experience to occur. Right, so this is all about trying to structure your thinking. When you have these game ideas, you imagine some really cool thing happening. How can we actually implement that? How can we put that into a game that people can really interact with? And so your core mechanics, right, those are the things that are needed by the most common elements of your experience. The things that the players will be doing most, that's where you should be spending the most of your time, particularly in this competition because it's so short. Right, invest your time on what the players will be doing the most. So let's see a couple examples, thinking about mechanics now. So this is the one I showed you before, right? We had our spaceflight theme in an alien world, shoot 'em up combat, we're gonna feel frustration and Fiero, and we have these AI enemies to allow you to have combat, you have bullet health, maybe feel frustration, and we've got power-ups to maybe help you feel Fiero, you find some large exploding bomb and you can use it to wipe out the entire screen. That might give you a nice feeling. Now let's think about this with a similar or the same context, spaceflight in an alien world, but with different dynamics. Now, instead of shoot 'em up combat, we might be wanting to make a game that involves building and piloting physically realistic rockets, okay? So you might know where I'm going with this. We have the same design goal, feeling frustration and Fiero, but now we have to think about what kind of mechanics we would need to actually make that dynamic happen as opposed to the previous one, right? Maybe we don't need AI bosses anymore. We probably don't need bullet hell or power-ups either, right? So we have to think now, for this dynamic, what mechanics do we need? And in this case, it might be listing, selecting, and placing ship parts to build a rocket ship. Maybe we need to have some mechanism for controlling this rocket ship, and then some kind of physics simulation to describe how the rocket ship will actually fly. And so you get something like Kerbal Space Program instead of Jamestown, just by kind of pulling out these dynamics and then fitting in the right mechanics to work with the new dynamics that you have. Okay? And so along these slides, I have in the slides a second exercise for you to do. We don't have time to do it right here, right now, but the slides will be online, and I have another handout like the one you got before that will help you in your game creator project teams kind of flesh out an idea based on starting with like a context, for example, or dynamics and so on. All right, so you can pick those up on your way out. I'll explain roughly now kind of what this new version of the exercise is about, so you can work on it later. Yeah, in this case, don't worry about that sentence up there. That's from when I do this in my game design development class here at RU. But here, you'd be starting with the context, and then you come up with your design goals, again, one of them being about a player emotion. And then you come up with dynamics that can serve those particular design goals in the context that you were given, so you can imagine a context for yourselves when you do this on your own. And then the last piece is to integrate mechanics into there, to figure out what mechanics, what particular gameplay possibilities you would need to make those player experiences come to be. And then finally, I highly recommend talking about these things with your friends. Like we did earlier, right? Everybody stood up and shared their ideas. It's super valuable to get feedback as often as you possibly can during this process, right? That's how you will make a better game. Create something simple, get feedback, iterate, get more feedback, iterate, get more feedback as many times as you possibly can over the next 4 weeks, all right? So to finish up today, I want to talk quickly about features and what you might want to think about when building these games. So you can think of a feature as falling into one of those different categories I told you before, right? Beautiful visuals, that could be part of your aesthetics. Your tough player choices, that could be part of the dynamics, the experience. You want players to really struggle with things. Visuals, that would be part of your context. Deep emotions, that would be part of your aesthetics. Maybe you have some particular design goal that people will really like you're trying to solve real-world science problems in the context of a game. Maybe you have a unique mechanic, or you've got some fancy game engine that you really want to use, okay? So you can think about these things that you might want to spend time working on during the course of your project, and really, they should fall into one of these two categories, ideally both, right? It should be effective in some way, and that means that it achieves or helps you achieve your design goal, that thing, that effect you want to have in your player. And it also needs to make sure that people will approach your game and actually stay there playing it for long enough that they'll actually feel this intended effect, okay? Now, you kind of have to choose these things wisely, though, because different features take more or less time and they add more or less value to your game, right? So instead of having something that takes a huge amount of work but doesn't add much value, you're looking for the blocks that are like this, right? You get a lot of extra value, but not too much extra work. So really keep an eye on that when you're working on your projects toward actually getting something done at the end of these 4 weeks. Okay. And finally, the last thing to say is for you to think about your core dynamics, or your core mechanics, rather. Like the things that the players will be doing the most often in your game. Make darn sure that they live right there, in between these two things. They have to be both effective and that they achieve your goal, and they have to be fun enough that people just want to do them and keep playing them on their own, even regardless of the rest of the game. So that's where you should focus for this work. And you can see a bit more about this, again, from the video, the talk that I gave last year. And this is on YouTube at the IGI YouTube page. This talk will be there very shortly as well. And so that is all I have to tell you about this kind of stuff. Thanks very much for your attention today.
Okay, so just to close, we are almost out of time. If you thought about any question to ask about the competition itself, you can talk to us after this, or there's a contact email on IGI Game Creator webpage, which is gamecreator.igi.is. And I hope this inspired you and impressed you and will be useful for your game. And with this, I think we should just close. And I say thank you. See you all next Saturday, 1 o'clock, this room. Thanks.